When Fannie Lou Hamer said, "I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired," she meant no more turn cheek, no more patience for the obstruction of a black woman's right to vote and plant and feed her family. She meant equality will cost you your luxurious life. If a black woman can't vote, if a brown baby can't be fed, if we all don't have the same opportunity America promised, she meant ain't no mountain boulder enough to wand off a determined woman. She meant, look, here at my hands, each palm holds a history of the 16 shots that chased me harm-free from a plantation shack. Look at my eyes. Both these are windows, these little lights of mine. She meant nothing but death can stop me from marching out a jail cell, still a free woman. She meant nothing but death can stop me from running for Congress. She meant no blackjack beating will stop my feet from working and my heart from swelling and my mouth from praying. She meant America. You will learn freedom feels like butter beans, potatoes, and cotton seeds picked by my sturdy hands. She meant, look, Victoria Gray, Anna Devine, and me in our rightful seats on the House floor. She meant until my children and my children's children and they, babies too, can march and vote and get back in interest what was planted in this blessed land. She meant I ain't stopping America. I ain't stopping America. Not even death can take away from my woman hands what I rightfully earned.
Whew, please make some noise in the chat for Mahogany L. Browne and the piece she just performed after Fannie Lou Hamer. Welcome, welcome, welcome to our 11th annual, but first ever digital Passing the Mic Festival Day 4, hosted by the Office of Multicultural Arts Initiatives, lovingly known as OMAI at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, home of the first and only full tuition scholarship program for hip hop and urban arts, First Wave. My name is Sofia Snow. I'm the director of OMAI First Wave and proud alumna of the first ever inaugural cohort. We have been at it every day this week with the Passing the Mic Festival. And tonight we have a really special event for you in partnership with Mahogany L. Browne and the National Youth Poet Laureate program. We'll be talking all about the vote, equity, access, and the American experiment. If any of you all feel something like I do, this week feels kind of heavy. Next week feels kind of a big deal. And today we're going to be hearing from Youth Poet Laureates all over the country to have a conversation about it. So I'd like to begin before we get in by thanking all of our incredible partners who made this week possible. UW-Madison's Division of Diversity, Equity, and Educational Achievement, School of Education, Arts Division, Interdisciplinary Arts Residency Program, and the Wisconsin Book Festival. Let's get into it, y'all. Let's just hop right in. So the first person I would like to welcome is a dear, dear friend of mine, a big sister to many. Please go make some noise in the chat for Mahogany L. Browne. She is a writer, organizer, and educator, the executive director of the Bowery Poetry Club and artistic director of Urban Word NYC, and poetry coordinator at St. Francis College. Browne has received fellowships from Agnes Gund, Air Serembi, Cave Canem, Poets House, Mellon Research, and Rauschenberg. She is the author of Woke, A Young Poet's Call to Justice, Woke Baby, and Black Girl Magic on Macmillan, Kissing Caskets, Yes, Yes Books, and Dear Twitter, penmanship books. She's also the founder of Woke Baby Book Fair, a nationwide diversity literature campaign, and as an Arts for Justice grantee, is excited to release her first YA novel, Chlorine Sky, in January 2021. Make sure you pre-order. She lives in Brooklyn, New York, coming live from Brooklyn. Please make some noise in the chat for the one, the only Mahogany L. Browne. Thank you for joining us.
Shout out to Sofia Snow, who I will show up anywhere, anytime for. I'm going to jump into this. I'm so excited to be here. Thank y'all for having me. Thank y'all for your vision, for being visionary. My name is Mahogany L. Browne, and before I begin, I'd like to acknowledge the Canarsie tribe of Lenape, the traditional custodians of the land on which I work and live. I recognize their continuing connection to land, water, and community. I pay respect to elders past, present, and emerging. We're here to talk about the vote, equity, access, and the experiment. When I think of the vote, I think of how to talk about the current state of our nation. I'm reminded of the campaign that was launched by a music mogul many years ago, Vote or Die. I was surprised to see the campaign had been revived after seemingly dormant for over a decade. Vote or die. And the topic, while spicy and provocative, felt heavy-handed at the least. The question seems to ignore that we, the people, are already dying. Dying from COVID-19, dying from lack of housing, dying from lack of food, dying from unemployment, dying from conditions that allow us to be militarized. So I say defund the police, abolish ICE, close Rikers. All of these require a vote. All require the people to demand the politicians elected to do the work of the people. So we must speak. And if we must speak, we must vote. What it means to vote. If you ask my late grandmother, she would say, what is the 15th Amendment? What is the 19th Amendment? What is Florida in 2016? What is Mississippi in 1882? What is New Jersey in 1776? What is Wisconsin in 2020? To vote means budgeting concerns for healthcare, urban gardening and planning, and the welfare of a community. To vote means to consider the disenfranchised. To vote means to voice. Fannie Lou Hamer fought and died fighting. To vote means to oath, more resolve than solvency. Voting is just the beginning. It is a timestamp. It is a reminder this needs to be fixed. The people have spoken. Our tax dollars are your salary, and our vote is the bottom line. When you ask who has access, I want you to consider Florida and the efforts to decriminalize those released from mass incarceration. Their rights restored only for the door to remain closed due to debt. If we ignore those whose access to voting is obstructed by fines and fees, what we are saying is you are not worth listening to. And we are then complicit to the citizens whose civil rights and liberties are denied. If an astronaut, Kate Rubin, can vote from space, why not the artists from Rikers Island? Why not the students from Angola prison? Why is no one listening to them? When someone asks you who deserves to vote, the answer is rhetorical. Everyone. Everyone. Especially when they are surviving the conditions of a system designed to end them. Who has been denied? Who has been denied to vote? See above. Look around. Raise your hands for the people detained. Raise your hands for the houseless. Raise your hands for those in shelter and hiding. Raise your fists for the ancestors and the elders. Raise your head high. The truth is heavy, but it is still the bread. If any of us are denied the right to vote, then we are all denied the right to vote. Today, we are gathered to listen to the next generation. They get it right with their poems, what we've gotten wrong in the polls. What we can do is strengthen our outreach by listening to young people. They see everything. They are witnesses to education and the effects of Neighborhood Watch. They are recipients of food deserts and financial aid woes. They are surviving COVID-19 with grace and still allowing space for others to understand what it means to think like a global citizen, what it means to enrich regionally, what it means to activate ideologies of freedom and abolition. Our young people will redesign what the Electoral College fails to obtain. Our young poets are at the reign of this conversation, participating, studying new ways to exist, thrive, and atone. For a nation still asleep from the thick milk of injustice. Okay, so now, before I bring on Camea, Dr. Camea, who's the leader, the purveyor of the Young Person's Vote and leading the YPL, the Youth Poet Laureate program, I want to talk about what's happening on the side. We have a conversation that you can dip into. If you look in the chat, there is a Zoom link. We're interviewing folks for the next hour and a half to talk about their voting experience. And it takes 2 to 3 minutes. I'll tell you what that project is about. The Power of Vote, a community dialogue about voting rights restoration and the power of vocal protest. This project intends to showcase dialogues between artists and community members impacted by mass incarceration. These exchanges will focus on the participants' thoughts and surroundings of the 2020 voting season. The interview responses will be used to synthesize a short film. The amplification of these voices, typically silenced by the current legal system, will highlight conditions that prevent equitable access to polling stations in what might be the most crucial election of our time. Art as protest is a consistent theme that I use in my work, and it's guided by the trajectory of poetry and community service. This collaborative project seeks to provide an unprecedented opportunity for participants and viewers to learn organizational strategies and healing practices. The interviews will be facilitated by my colleague, Adam Faulkner. Again, that Zoom link is in the chat window. Now for the rest of the program. Dr. Camea Davis will be coming up next. She is the Assistant Director of the Center for Equity and Justice in Teacher Education and a Research Assistant Professor at the College of Education and Human Development in the Department of Middle and Secondary Education at Georgia State University. Her research focuses on racial justice in teacher education, critical collaborative ethnography, and critical poetic inquiry. Current studies including researching a university, community, and school-based teacher residency to explore structures that support racial justice in teacher education, youth civic action, and qualitative methodologies that view research as a liberationist act. She serves as the National Director of the Youth Poet Laureate Program, an initiative of Urban Word NYC, an award-winning youth literary arts and youth development organization. Please welcome to the virtual stage, Dr. Camea Davis.
Good evening. I am the daughter of Camea, Roxy, and Carrie, the daughter of Alice, Lula, and Mamie, the daughter of Lamont, Lonnie, and Willie, a free people. I am calling in from Atlanta, Georgia, and I share with you all my lineage to let you know that who we are and how we show up is deeply civic. And through my research and through my life, I'm coming to know that every time I think about voting, I'm reminded of my grandmother. And every time I try to write about it, I'm reminded of my grandmother. So I just want to bring her and all my grandmothers into the space with me today. First, I'll share a little bit about the Youth Poet Laureate program. It is a fantastic program, national in scope. We are a program of Urban Word NYC that is offered in conjunction with our major partners, the Academy of American Poets, the Library of Congress, the Poetry Coalition, and a national network of over 65 local Youth Poet Laureate programs across the United States. Our primary focuses in the Youth Poet Laureate program are literary excellence, civic engagement, social justice, and social impact. So we seek out young people from across the country who are phenomenal writers and speakers, but equally as phenomenal civic activists and civic actors in their community. And we award the title of a Youth Poet Laureateship. And from the local title, they also can advance to the regional as well as the national title of National Youth Poet Laureate. So this afternoon, we have several of our laureates from different parts of the country, local, regional, and national laureates are with us tonight. So let's jump right into it. We will hear from the poets that will share poems, and then we will come back and have a dialogue in a little bit. So first up to the virtual stage is Hasna. Hasna was born in Baghdad, Iraq, and she moved to the United States as a refugee in 2008. Her poetic debut was in 2017's Poetry Night in Ann Arbor production. She made the 2018 Louder Than a Bomb Ann Arbor Slam Poetry team. opened for the world-renowned poet Mohad Kaf at the Rackham on March 23rd. And in February 2020, she performed as a youth feature alongside Jericho Browne. She was Ann Arbor, Michigan's 2019 Youth Poet Laureate. She is currently the Midwest 2020 Regional Youth Poet Laureate Ambassador. And she released her debut collection, Cardamom, in April of 2020. Hasna's work is reflective of her experiences as an Arab indigenous woman, American citizen, and refugee. Hasna is also passionate about visual art and building a youth library in her community. She hopes to ensure access to literature and visual art for community members who could not access these resources previously. Everyone, welcome to the virtual stage, the 2020 Regional Youth Poet Laureate Ambassador for the Midwest, Hasna.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much for that introduction. I'm going to start off by reading Dolma Roast for the Soul. Been looking at Iraqi dolma recipes for 6 weeks now. You always add sugar before the parsley. It'll make up for the bitter in the tomato paste. If you switch the ground beef out for diced sirloin, it'll taste like nights where the wind chills just enough to act as a fan. Everyone forgets the citric acid. How else do you get the sour to sing? My mother got the recipe from her neighbor because her mother couldn't cook. I left home before I learned it. Before I could boil lineage back into bones, I Frankenstein the recipes of 20 Iraqi women in an effort to recreate my mother's trademark. Held a million bodies and no one's arms are firm enough to need the ideal stuffing. Mama would say the key is avoiding shortcuts. A labyrinth of the wrong recipes, I am a path of shortcuts. My mama would make a day out of dolma. Spend 2 hours alone forging onion shells, carving zucchini, carving out the seeds. We would simmer the bitter out. Let it breathe for at least 15 minutes before she would flip the pot on a now overflowing tray. Next up is Bad Roads Love Us Too. I think of the ways Baghdad tried to love me. With her raspberry slushies and prayer beads, her cement trucks and traffic hubs long enough to grill you alive, every road is unpaved. Each slice of concrete holds a branch for my family tree. Blocks of sidewalks show me the 5 miles my parents walked to school. On calcined lime and broken radiator, each step is a family reunion. On asphalt that can't tell me apart from my cousins, Baghdad, the home that forgets me. Baghdad, the auntie who needs to be reminded what my name is. Baghdad places 2 kisses on each cheek while calling me by my mother's name. This next piece is titled Dead, as in corpses were involved. My mother says war is coming. Says the sky tastes the same day as we fled Baghdad, the air sits on my tongue. My mouth spends the next 20 days reacquainting myself with that hiding feeling. Before we fled, we spent 3 months cooped up in our little brick house. At the dead end of Hayy al-Am's sandiest road, we hid, dead silent. Turned the fruit to jam before it went bad. Stretched 1 bag of jasmine rice, 3 months fine with our jasmine rice, our jam, our hiding feeling, our silence, until the knocking came. Until we got 8 minutes to grab what we had and flee. In the car ride across the border, I might have asked my mother for fruit. 5 years old, Hello Kitty pajamas unsoiled, I am hungry. I have a moon pie for dinner. My mother uses the last of her cash to buy this ride. We risk being robbed and killed here. My taste buds marinate in the hum of SUV tires on dirt road, sticky air and marshmallow. This could have been the first time I swallow blood. Today, I watch my mother cut citrus in perfect halos. She places them in a glass jar with ginger and bathes it all in honey. She wants the fruit to last. She's turning some of it to jam. We sit together and talk about God that night. We sit together and talk about God, our voices a hymn, ringing like fresh fruit on a lover's doorstep. This next piece is titled Ibrahim. On my 5th Eid, My cousin Ibrahim climbed the brick fence that kissed the date tree in our front yard. Other side decorated with barbed wire. Our neighbors put it there. When the boys from down the street climbed the brick fence into their daughter's bedroom, this border satiates a craving for something sweet, a deflowering, a taste of girl, a fruit. It's his fifth Eid too. Ibrahim wants a date. With bulbs for hands, stumbles up alabaster bricks, a block away from harvest. Ibrahim in his cardamom belly, full of the wrong flesh, a bad plum, a fig ballooned with helium wasps. I watch him fly, clutch at sun, skid, slip, slither. His shoe is off. Ibrahim is missed. Ibrahim gets the barbed wire reserved for boys with curious hands and impotent leaps. Ibrahim gets the piglet shirt we used to stop the bleeding. Ibrahim is barbed wire. As his Eid clothes in the shouts for his left shoe, forget the blood. Forget the metal in his cranium and the fallen dates. Forget in this moment Ibrahim is still a boy. Ibrahim still wants his shoes. Ibrahim is Christopher Walken. Alloy chords honey, I am Winnie, gently lifting his head into pink cloth, halting raspberry leaks, waiting for the sun to drop a candied fledgling into this ingot bush. And finally, I have identity crisis Ophelia. I'm changing my name to Ophelia, crown myself practical with all my mother's lectures, carve sensible gal. And to every self-portrait, catch me flowing down a brook of all this self-love. All glowing, all reclamation of girl and bones. I come from Bedouins and overbite babes. You can't outswim me. Born from Adam's ale and Tigris, I'll regrow the tides the moment you think you've caught me drowning. Melt the moon closer. Propel every wave that meets sand and skin. Mama did not raise me with corn syrup dripping from my tongue for you to turn me bitter. My homeland too hot for you to claim this skeleton as bloody cold, so I try to undo every time I've held my head in an overflowing sink. Learn to breathe underwater. Grow my hair out or don't. Lift my arms to keep paddling, canoeing back to self-sufficiency. Avoid the messy ripples I brought on being. This is not healing. It's an attempt at making sense of all the ways I've recrafted self into sound. It's rubbing jojoba oil in my hair after spending my youth Eurocentrifying these features, nourishing what has grown on stuffed grape leaves and dowry gold, a history, a chronicle of all things beautiful, glittering and odd rituals and superstitious aunties. I am a book of unused material, a broken compass, unsure of where I'm going, if my sails will rip, if the ocean becomes tsunami in her efforts to take me, but Mama birthed me with a built-in life jacket. It's not in my DNA to drown. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for making the time to present me, and I'm so excited to hear everyone who's gonna read after. And thank you so much, Mahogany, for blessing us with your words before. Thank you all for joining us.
All right. Thank you, Na. Thank you. I hope you all were paying attention to the wordplay and the imagery. I see the chat blowing up. Mama didn't raise me with corn syrup off my tongue for you to call me bitter. What? Go in, poet. So we want everyone that's watching to stay engaged in the chat. Put your favorite line, put a comment. Also, if you want to be interviewed for the Mahogany L Browne Vote Project, you can join at the breakout room right now for just a 2-minute interview about your experience with voting. We would love to have your voice and your face. So go to the comments in this video and click to join that Zoom room. Over here, we are going to move to the next Youth Poet Laureate, Jackson Neal. Jackson Neal is a poet from Houston, Texas. They are the 2019 Houston Youth Poet Laureate and the National Youth Poet Laureate Ambassador. They've touched the stages of the Library of Congress, the Kennedy Center, and many more. They currently attend the University of Wisconsin-Madison as a first wave scholar, where they are pursuing a degree in creative writing and dance. So everyone, make some noise in your room, wherever you are, for Jackson Neal coming to the virtual stage.
For 6 years, I trained in Taekwondo at a dojang owned by the U.S. Olympic team. I did not like to fight, but I loved to be broken into. Training whittled us into quick stilettos so sharp, so sure of how we want to hurt. First time I knocked wind from lung, I wore the hot breath like a gown. Every bone bruised blue, penny bright split lip taught me how to love a wound. Don't know if I am boy or blade when I bow before the mirror, praying one day that ugly effigy will buck. Every fight is between you and who you think you are. Full of pheromones and lightning, new parts of you unhinge, old ones rattle off. In the madness of breath and bone, something cracks open. Dark hours at the heavy bag, I slammed my knuckles raw. The skin on my fist came off easy like wet paper, and someone was trying to get out, dressed in pulp and red. I saw her, the feminine in me, the red bullet of my lip, long fang of my nail, the smoke that wraps around me in the night. She had come to say her name, to lick the blood off my shame and prove it was delicious. Like any fight I entered, not a violence, but a violence undone. The girl, she had to be born, red and messy as any newborn. I don't want to hurt anyone. I want to prove I'm someone worth fighting for. Hey everyone, my name is Jackson Neal. I'm coming to you from Akokosi land in Houston, Texas, and this is my set. Multiple choice test after the hurricane. Houston's 2015 flood was so large, meteorologists predicted it could only happen once every 500 years. In 2016, a second 500-year flood hit my city. In 2017, Hurricane Harvey was so large, meteorologists predicted it could only happen once every 1,000 years. Question 1. What does 20 centuries of grief look like? A. Grandmother's home, a wooden skeleton. Each plank the plea of a drowning man, oak piano. Ceramic chickens, the wedding photos all drenched in shit. Salt crusted, buried under dead possums. B. Your father, 49, crying in his mom's arms. What we do not hold, the ocean takes. It is hard to place water. There is water in the body, and there are bodies in the water. C. It looks like 34 trillion gallons. D. 20 centuries is a grief beyond religion. The earth is gone after 40 days, and then what? This water takes planets. It floods heaven. The ocean knows no God. Question 2. If you close your eyes, the rain will also sound like A. Fire. B. Our homes cracked open. C. Our bodies husked like crawfish. D. Rain. Just rain. It's just rain. It won't stop. Question 3. When the politicians offer only prayers, you will tell them A. It is dangerous to pray in the midst of spirits. We are warned not to drink the water, for the way the dead will pool your stomach and speak using your vessel. Your amen tastes like a mouth of venom. B. Who is your God? What's his tax bracket? What's his party? Is he white? Is your God insured? Did you make tithes? Did you make a tax cut? Did you make a sacrifice? Was our blood enough? C. I know your God. God of coal, God of oil, God of fracking, God of overdevelopment, massive hurricanes 3 times more likely, God of Trinity, God of Noah, take your God back. We ask for no blessings, we give no thanks, we drink the blood of salt and spit. D. I've seen the way you bend plate and see. When the Gulf of Mexico is 10 degrees warmer, was it not by your hand? Did you not co-sign this to 185 oil and gas companies? Where we once had soil to hold us, there is only concrete. Hurricane intensity has risen 15%. What is 15% of a prayer? Answers. We are a people made of more answers than problems. Our answers inundate sea. Our renewable wind, river, yes, still breathing. There are answers in my Nana's cooking. When we had to evacuate and every road was closed, we found a way out. Our answers float. They say love. There are answers in my people. My clutch city. My H-town till I drown. My H-town has drowned. And I wonder why that is not answer enough. God does a dip. Left heel buckled and soft of me. Right heel slung like an axe. I shred a hall of boy-shaped mirrors with the teeth of my stiletto. Everything about me is crisp. I make a blade of wings and slash new eyeliner. I make a man of red clay and crush him for my rouge. I mean, look at me. Only when I say. Light. I fashion light from the tip of my manicure. I coax morning back into its shell, the tip of my acrylic. I'm bad. Creature of rhinestone and clavicle. Creature of leather and gems. Even my boy name shatters when I clack against pavement. Look at me. And don't look away. As I drip from your sky. A petrel bird. A wisp of fire. Laying waste to men who envy me. Is this what it takes to keep the queens alive? The nation of Adam split at the seam. At a library in Houston, a white man in a MAGA hat pointed a gun at the drag queen asked to read stories to children. Walking to my car in makeup, a hive of frat boys threatened to beat me. There are men so afraid of women they would torch their own mothers to forget where they come from. I steal lip gloss from my mom's purse and invite the same. Sometimes I am both my mom and the match. So what to do? Our bodies fall, like rain kissing the forest fire. At the party, the walls weep, christened by our sweat. As we throw ourselves into the air, a legion of lace-dyed women cackle. I'm dead, meaning I have left Earth to join the circus. One by one we jump, faces stretched so wide, they split a nation, runny with the yoke of our lips, and nowhere could be further from death. In the brief moment we are flying in reverse, not Earth, not heaven, not dead, only a dazzling slaughter of the old name, back art like horizon, lights out the instant we drop. Once again, my name is Jackson Neal. Thank you so much, everybody.
All right. The chat, everyone is just going crazy. Just yes, Jackson, yes. So many just flame lines. We can't wait to get in conversation to hear you talk through some of those ideas. For now, we will move to the next Youth Poet Laureate. The next Youth Poet Laureate speaking tonight is the 2020 National Youth Poet Laureate. At the age of only 16 years old, she won the 2020 title for National Youth Poet Laureate. In 2019, she was the New York City Youth Poet Laureate. She's also a Van Leer Fellow, a Federal Hall Fellow, a Climate Speaks winner, Scholastic Arts and Writing winner. Her performances have been featured by the New York Times, PBS, Apple, the Apollo, Bryant Park, and many others. She has been invited to perform at Carnegie Hall, the Teen Vogue Summit, amongst many others. Meera uses the intersection between social justice and poetry to uplift the voices of historically underrepresented communities. Everyone make some noise for Meera coming to the virtual stage.
Yo Mama jokes. Yo Mama Parks manifested a black magic school bus from the backseat of the American dream. Yo Mama Earhart signed a contract with the clouds and stayed there. Yo Mama Guges beheaded the patriarchy before she died in its embrace. Yo Mama Cleopatra danced naked in the Nile before she became a queen. Yo Mama Kahlo used culture as a coaster for her canvas. Yo Mama Hurston let God bleed a manifesto off of her 100 tongues. Yo Mama Sappho knew to cook her poems raw. Yo Mama Angelo roasted white privilege on a spit like a squealing pig. Yo Mama Truth exhaled a revolution in pursuit of her name. Yo Mama Curie discovered that women can be radioactive. Yo Mama Tubman embraced the railroad and the soil and the loud that were her limbs. Yo Mama Ride swallowed the stars and grew herself a galaxy. Yo Mama Mirabai twisted her hands in a prayer for a God she did not fully know. Yo Mama Yusufzai found her savior at the back of a bullet. Yo Mama Steinem scorched the earth until nature didn't need a mother but a woman. There is a joke somewhere in this poem, but I can't seem to find the laughter to accompany it. Hi, my name is Meera. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm currently wearing a red velvet top, Indian American with shoulder-length hair. And the first poem that I performed was Yo Mama Jokes, and I want to keep in mind while we're voting that so many other people did not have the right to vote. And I wanted to recognize all the women who came before me in this and bring them to the forefront of this set that I'm now going to perform for you. My poems as victims of gun violence. This is where my poems go to pen their eulogies. They bleed a black ink and find a casket that blends well with the ground. I do not know if my poems prefer gardenias or roses. The rapid firing of a gun leaves my poem bloated with sudden death, judgment, a narrative in which they don't have a name. America remembers the anniversary of my poem's memorial, lights a candle but forgets that my poems are not love poems. My poems are students tearing up the streets in their new Air Jordans, our teachers holding the Big Apple in the palm of their hands, our janitors mopping the floor of the mess that other poems have left behind. My poems aren't bulletproof. My poems bury friends before they bury themselves. My poems sob when dissecting frogs in biology class, have gloves on so the blood can't streak their hands in transaction. My poems love their mamas, still kiss them on the forehead before going to bed. My poem shot a fizzy glass of white privilege before it shot them in the forehead. My poems pray to God sometimes. My poems reread horoscopes. My poems do not pretend to know the future, so they walk to the horizon and stay there. Shatter the sky until their bodies parch the light of their names. Dance in the shadows until they are but one, writhing black mass in the distance. Their death, eclipsing the sun where they stand. So the next poem that I'm going to read to you is one that I wrote a little while ago, and it's called Blazing Cities, and it's about why our cities are burning. Blazing cities. In order to rise from its own ashes, a phoenix first must burn. Octavia Butler, Parable of the Talents. Mama City is an overflow of scorching highways and peeling skins. Her incendiary prayer presses untutored spines against a playground where heavenly bodies become gasoline. The bark of the corner deli singes baby hairs and all that is doused in oil. Suns guzzle lighter fluid, choke on seasoned air, set the boulevard ablaze with wax-laden bellies that hail themselves a bonfire. Between necropolis and red brick oven, the city buries itself beneath a sheet of ash. Grease dribbles off of children's lips and sears golden vagabonds black. Tongues their uneven gait, the foul-mouthed and gutter-born, the torch-strapped and hard-nosed babes stinking up the curb, their smokestack mouths blistering, fatty, smoldering psalms. For a meal, men ignite their own houses, spark matches to set on their copper-lined graves. Mama watches smiles melt and hearts crisp turn, crumble, how the cardinal flames rise, fuel drowning already dead men. The dead men dead before the fire, black men black before the flames. The city is a dead man stoking the embers upon which he lays. With all of his 1,000 small deaths do the fumes finally reach us. Mama gazes outside of her window at a horizon of soot and sand, at the cinder collecting footprints below the fire escape, at her own combustible words. Has the fire always been this large? Or has it always been burning? Thank you very much, and I hope after this you go out and vote, or at least use your voices in order to create tangible change within your communities and for the people who are a part of those communities. And I believe that youth voice is so important, which is why I'm so grateful to be here and bear witness to all of these young people, young poets and artivists, to be more specific, using their own voices and their artivism in order to inspire worldwide change.
All right, and next we will have an animated poem by Meera titled Arbor.
Arbor. A hero is an ordinary individual who finds the strength to persevere and endure in spite of overwhelming obstacles. Christopher Reeve. America was bred from ink and unbreakable union. With the turn of the decade, I expected the nation to remember its history at the brink, to be remade with revolution and evolution as a priority in which the people make up the majority of the solution. Instead, I found a country at a cliffhanger which hangs its citizens, close contact prohibited, people praying for their dead, a movement restabilizing the foundations of this nation built upon the condemnation of those who were born to be the concrete soot and sand grounding upturned limbs. It is no wonder that these wounds bleed black. The blood is a dead man's armor. The blood is an armor turned sword. The sword inks a body and its babies unto America and its unifying words, students, fists raised in protest, neighbors, hand in hand uplifting the rest, frontline workers, besting a virus which left us unfiltered and alone. From our homes, we stand united. Vote not as an individual, but as one of a lineage knighted by the pen, not the hand. It is during these uncertain times that we must understand the bones and lessons of those who've come before. To not ignore the horizons above crashing, turbulent shores. To not ignore the cost, for there is so much left in store, for it is only when we continue to swim, continue to rise and make ourselves known, that we, as the people of this nation, can truly learn to mend and grow.
Whew, I do not know about you all, but there's something that not just gives me hope about hearing young people tell their own stories, but also pushes me. Shout out to every single Youth Poet Laureate who just came up and told their truth and spoke their lives. And also shout out to Meera with the accessibility and making sure that this is available and accessible to everyone. I thank you so much. So this next portion of the event, we're going to come and get into a conversation. And if you've been with us all week, then you may already feel like you know the moderator of this upcoming panel, this living legend. But for those of you just joining us today, I must introduce, as I said yesterday, everyone's favorite mentor's mentor. Please make some noise in the chat for Bamuthi, Mark Bamuthi Joseph, proudly serves as Vice President and Artistic Director of Social Impact at the John F. Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts in Washington, D.C. He also engages in a deeply fulfilling, successful artistic career and has an evening-length work created in collaboration with composer Daniel Bernard Roumain, The Just and the Blind, commissioned by and premiered to a sold-out Carnegie Hall in March 2019. We have the blessing of viewing a digital rendition of The Just and the Blind tomorrow. Please don't forget to register at OMAI First Wave. Back in 2007, Bamuthi was the interdisciplinary artist in residence here at UW-Madison. His residency in 2007 gave birth to several multicultural hip hop and urban art initiatives we carry on today and laid the foundation for the Office of Multicultural Arts Initiatives to found the First Wave Hip Hop and Urban Arts Learning Community and Scholarship Program to begin just the following year. He is our co-curator of this festival this week and has introduced this idea of the American experiment. So I'm going to invite Bamuthi to come here to engage all of our incredible young people and Dr. Davis in this conversation. Thank you for joining us, Bamu. It's so good to see you again.
It is always good to see you. I flew over you last night. And
word.
And I'm now back in Washington, D.C. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah.
From coast to coast this week.
That's how we're doing. We're playing time. We're playing time. Something that all of us, and certainly all of these poets, are shape shifters, time benders. So let's bring the whole crew back. Let's
bring them back.
All y'all geniuses. What's up? What's up? What's up? Meera, what's up? Nah, what's up? Jackson, what's up? Camea, how you feeling? How you feeling?
Hey.
Oh my God. Hey, Bamuthi. Good to see you.
Great to see y'all. It's great to see y'all. So safely, I can probably say I'm the oldest person here. I recall my first time voting. Do you all have like folklore as it relates to the vote? Do you have a memory, maybe like what's the first election, local or national, that you remember?
So the last presidential election that happened, I was in high school and I was like a junior.
Mm-hmm.
And I was in like marching band. It's a big thing that like folks do in Texas, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was actually away for like a competition for band, right? And it was very late in the morning, so most of us like went to bed and woke up to the news. And what was so difficult about that was that upon learning this devastating information, we all at anywhere from 14 to 18 then had to go on a field and perform and parade like entertainment for folks. And I think in many ways that felt like very true to the experience of living under these conditions, wherein I don't get a say in the travesties that happen, and still we like proceed and we perform and we just kind of continue as ones who experience that. Like so much about that experience like felt like being under the direction, under being this sort of like stream of the like megalodon of America, and not really having a say in who is creating the choreography that with which we move through the nation, with which we move through our lives.
Mm-hmm.
So, amen. I think my first memory of an election in the United States was actually our first year of living here. I came as a refugee in 2008, and I got to watch my very old rusty television that we got from, I think it was like the Jewish Family Center was kind enough to furnish our apartment when we first moved here, and I, seeing it on the screen, and it was my first experience with American politics and the American electoral system. And that experience versus now, having been old enough to vote for a couple of years now, and kind of going from a state of not being familiar with the system, not being familiar with what I'm seeing on my screen. Why are some states red? Why are some blue? What's this all about? Why am I celebrating? You know? And I think the older I've gotten and the more familiar I've gotten with this system, this idea of celebrating when someone wins or when someone loses and what that means to these people. Less so my experience with a celebration of anyone being put in office, more so what is this culture surrounding voting? What is this culture surrounding freedom in relation to voting? And I think that's something that's always been on my mind since that first experience. It's something I'm excited to explore with you guys today.
Yeah, I definitely agree. The first time I was cognizant of the vote was probably in 5th grade. I didn't know too much, but that was around 2012, and they had a slip of paper with the people who were running, and I remember just not knowing the ramifications of picking one person in relation to those around me. But I think, as has been said before, even within this panel, is that we begin to become more knowledgeable as we learn about the world around us and become more civically engaged. And I think that's also a testament to the power of being able to be educated about the vote as well, because I know that accessibility has been something that has been particularly difficult in the current moment. So not only making sure that you have your own privilege to vote, but also using your privilege to allow and help other people get their vote out if they can as well.
It's kind of ironic. My first voting experience, I was actually in Madison. So in the second cohort of first wave, it was 2008. And it was just an exciting moment, especially to be on a college campus. I think for the nation, of course, but also just to be with so many other young people really excited about the vote. And we were campaigning and we were busing to all these different cities across Wisconsin to canvass. And I just remember feeling so much pride, so much excitement, the celebration after the announcement. It was such a huge thing. And I remember a particular moment where we were on campus and everybody was so happy. And we ran outside and we saw the police. Police cars everywhere, and all the people of color were like, oh shoot, like let's go back in the doors. But this particular moment, the police were blocking the street so we could all like celebrate from campus all the way down to the Capitol building. So they weren't stopping us, they were like making a barrier so people could be in the street safely without cars passing through. And I remember that so vividly because it was the first time in my whole life where I was like, oh, this is okay for the police to be here with all of us out here like this. And just, the pictures and everybody was posing, doing the pose from the Olympics. Everybody was so excited. But I think the media that was around that particular election, it was so much joy and positive energy around the voting experience. And I was so happy to be a voting age for that election. So that's what I remember.
One of the things that I remember about the first time I was eligible to vote was that I chose not to. The first time that I was eligible, I was in college as well, and I wasn't too thrilled about my choices. I looked at the choices, at the very least at the top of the ticket, and neither one seemed to relate to my brand of politics, and very specifically to the issues that were most important to me at the time. And I wonder if you're experiencing any of that now. And this is really a two-part question for each of you. One, how do you combat your own apathy or your own cynicism? What compels you to move politically forward or electorally forward? And two, Is there a particular issue that kind of drives you in thinking about who you would want to support to represent you? In other words, is it the economy? Is it autonomy over a woman's body? Is it marriage equality? Is it the environment? I guess it's two really separate questions, but for me, they're related. One, how do you overcome apathy? How do you overcome cynicism when you feel it creeping in? And two, what does motivate you forward? What issue, if not a person, motivates you forward and maybe to the polls? While our panelists are thinking about this, for folks that are tuning in and streaming at home, if you have a particular story yourself and you want to share, the chat is wide open for you. But panelists, what moves you forward? How do you combat your cynicism?
I can begin. I think that apathy and cynicism are in fact technologies of whiteness, right? Come from like the creation of an identity that is central on believing oneself as immediate or as assumed. So white people are allowed to be apathetic because their indifference, our indifference, doesn't come with consequences. Like the world that we have constructed, the world that white people construct in their favor, then assumes that if you do not interrogate it, do not question it, do not disrupt it in any way, shape, or form, will continue to benefit other white people. So I think that like apathy is super important to sustaining the technologies of white supremacy. So for white people who want to participate, who want to disrupt that legacy, it is your absolute duty to unlearn this idea that we don't have any kind of work to do, that we are allowed to be apathetic. Because the education we receive, the tools we receive, all the information we receive from a white supremacist system are not going to give you what you need to take it down. So it is then your mission, our mission, to go outward and to do the work and unlearn the idea that we're simply going to passively receive what we need to know to proceed through the world.
Yes.
So that's what's inspiring me to take action, inspiring me to overcome this idea that I don't have any kind of authority in the like grand voter system. In terms of issues that are driving me forward,
can I just
yes, of course,
interrupt you very quickly? I just need to show the people the goosebumps on my arm. That was so moving. I had a chemical reaction to that. Thank you. I didn't mean to fully interrupt, but I just want to let you know it's chemical, dog. It's real. Please continue. The issues.
No. Thank you, Obidi. I appreciate that. In terms of issues that move me forward, like I think that's a conglomerate for everyone, of course. But specifically, I think this question of like women having autonomy over really like people having autonomy over their own bodies is the one that I keep coming back to in every segment, right? Whether it's reproductive rights, whether it's environmental, like our own futures and how far we get to live ahead into our life is being determined by like oil prices and by like institutional changes and policies, and all of this has to do with how we are able to move. And so I'm a dancer. I think about movement, and so much about what is happening in every segment of kind of the massive issue of the political body and what it has control over is our bodies, is who gets to decide which bodies can move through the world with their own autonomy as they ought to. And I think that this system is very fraught to undo all of that violence which already exists. But I know that also that we can selectively push ourselves into a position where we're closer to freedom, where we're closer to the movement that we want to see. And again, if we're fighting for our ability to move, for our ability, am I back?
Yeah, we're back.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Then the movement at hand is also the movement of voting. It is moving oneself to the polls, and that is why it's called a movement, right? When we collectively want to break open and to create new ideas, is because it's about like changing your physical location, changing your proximity to other people, and changing the government at hand. And so that is to say that all of these issues I'm thinking about, and all of them get me so concerned, but it's all for the same reason. And it's because I think that I want like the human figure to be closer always to its freest form. And the polls are one of the instruments that we have at hand to do that.
Beautiful, thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. What an incredible way to kick off that question. I think as an Indigenous person and as a woman of color, it's less of a question for me of apathy and more so exhaustion, especially for the Black people in my life, the Black women specifically. For us, in the way that we've been taking care of one another as women of color and Indigenous people, is checking in on one another, is making sure that we still have life in us, because I see so much of the organizing that's happening. And I don't like to personally identify myself as an activist. I see myself as a community member, because I think when we attach, this is just my opinion, when we attach names to these things, I think it's kind of added to the commodification of this work, which at its core is not this upper echelon thing. It's human work. It's thing that as a community member, I'm passionate about, that I'm concerned with as a member, because that's what at least the Indigenous teachings I've been brought up on, and that's what sustained these Indigenous communities previously for so many centuries, or so many years. It's this idea that we're not necessarily, we don't have to become these like super well, because not everyone has that access to the resources that make us so well versed in certain issues. But by approaching it as like, I'm a community member and I'm doing my best with my energy, that's something that has been a saving grace for me and my loved ones. I think taking time to be patient with oneself and to just sit in your being has been a very pivotal part of maintaining that inner peace as well as that passion. Because if you've run out of fuel, you can't really drive the movement much. And sometimes it's okay to step to the side, take care of yourself, because that in itself is activism. That in itself is revolution. For people whose very being has been, how many different ways can we minimize your ability to exist, your ability to breathe, to stop and breathe? That is an act of revolution. To love one another is an act of revolution. I have my own views on voting and the voting system, especially on the national scale.
Yeah.
But I'm very passionate about local politics. And I think that I see something that's happening with the youth, is that they're getting passionate about voting. They're getting passionate about politics, which is an incredible thing. It's important to take important attention to these things, to take notice of the ways in which your future, your children's future is going to be planned out. Because as Jackson mentioned, we don't have that luxury of not experiencing consequences for these votes that we make, for these choices that we make. And so by being involved in local politics, on the other hand, that is how you kind of kick off the domino effect for who gets to run for president. Before somebody runs for president, there's somebody who's in charge of your child's public school council. There's a school board. There's a community board. There are people who are in charge of the plumbing in your city, people who are in charge of the kind of books your kids get to read, people who are in charge of your baby's curriculum, as well as your, all of that. And you get a vote on that. You get a sure local impact in that situation outside of electoral college and all that. And not that these things aren't important as well, and not that you cannot make impact through it. But for folks who are also unable to vote, those who are incarcerated, in only 13 out of 50 states can you vote. When I moved here, the incarceration rate was at an all-time peak with 9.8 million people incarcerated. With a felony, you cannot vote outside of 13 states, as I said previously. So that means now more than 9.8 million people are not granted the right, despite this idea of a restorative process, this idea that we're bringing them into these systems so that we can rehabilitate them, so that they can re-enter society. How is someone going to re-enter a society they cannot participate in?
Wow.
And now you have streets crawling with people who can't participate, who feel like, and something that's really crucial that Mahogany mentioned at the beginning, and something that immediately came to my mind when I was asked to be on this panel, is the phrase vote or die. Because for those who don't have access to citizenship, for those who don't have access to voting rights, do we just die? Are there not other ways for us to make change? Is planting a community garden not an act of revolution? Is giving these people access to literacy, is giving these people access to healing art, to visual art, giving these people access to ways in which they can contact people who may make the reality of voting for them possible, is that not revolution? Or do they just die? Do we just die? That's me.
I don't know if there's anything left, Dr. Davis.
I was thinking, well, that's the whole dissertation right there.
Every single crumb just snatched.
Done.
Nah. But what you think? What's how do you combat your apathy when and if you feel it?
I'm never going to deny the fact that I still experience an incredible level of privilege at being a lighter-skinned Arab Indigenous person, at being a citizen, having that right. I do have that ability, that like my first as an adult interaction with that voting back and forth was someone telling me, you got your right to, you're a citizen now and you're not gonna vote? Then what was it all about? And I told her, not getting deported, girl.
Ooh.
And so it also begs a question of like, how am I using my privilege in this situation? But as someone who has experienced life under people like Saddam Hussein, who's experienced life under the aftershocks of U.S. imperialism, direct U.S. imperialism and propaganda, it's me finding that middle ground of, am I exhausting myself by participating? And also watching myself, I have to hold myself accountable. And in that same token, I'm blessed and lucky enough to have people in my life who hold me accountable. And that is how I combat that empathy, honestly, is just having a circle of incredibly powerful people who tell me, and excuse my language, when I fuck up.
Yeah, I excuse your language. You said a lot of other good words.
Thank you.
So, like all 4-letter words are acceptable as long as they're contextualized with all the damn lyrics you spitting, dog. It was incredible. Beautiful. Thank you so much. Dr. Davis, man. Oh, and first of all, for the folks that are with us, Meera's having some connection issues. We're going to try to integrate her back into the space. Obviously, an incredibly important voice, and want to hear from them as well. So we're working hard on our technical issues. Dr. Davis, what motivates you when and if you choose to vote? Is there a primary issue that compels you to do so?
Primary issue, if I had to say one, I would say education, conceived broadly, because it intersects all the issues. So healthcare, housing, food disparities, like food deserts, all of that. If you look inside a school building, you will engage with all of those issues, as well as minimum wage issues, right? How much people are being paid, socioeconomic status, how is that impacting children's learning in a space? Mental health and wellness, all of that is happening in one school building at any given time or place. So for me, that would be the issue. I think in addition to a career dedicated to education, in this moment, I'm really concerned about healthcare. One, because I'm growing up, getting a little older, so that stuff kind of matters. And also just with this whole COVID thing, seeing how it's impacting so many communities and how people don't have healthcare and what that actually means, from like little tiny things like a medicine that could help you live better and be able to do your work well and not be in pain, to huge things like the respirator and not having enough in one space. So, and then lastly, I'll just say I recognize myself on a continuum. So for me this year, my great grandmother passed away right at the beginning of COVID at the age of 93. And so to think, you know, she was nearly 100 years old. Women got the right to vote 1920. Like all of that for me is pushing me to the polls. It's telling me something about who I am and who I have to be. And my grandmother lived on a farm. My family owned the farm. So they worked. And when I talked to her about her life, she talked a lot about the autonomy she had because she lived in that space of owning farm, providing food for family, all those things. When so many people in America, when she was growing up, didn't have access to those things. So when I think of myself and all of my privileges, it is imperative on me to show up to vote. For her, like this year, her vote won't count. Like she can't cast her ballot. So that's something that I think a lot about. Let me see, Meera's back, so I want to give the mic to her.
Right on. Meera, how you doing, fam? You okay over there? Comme ci, comme ça. Shout out to the pipe. Shout out to the ceiling. Okay, can't quite hear you yet. We're still working to better integrate your voice. Now we have your beautiful being. We can see you.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Keep going. Let's see what happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
Okay, good. So I just wanted to say Kurt actually had to leave, so my connection came in really at a point where I had to leave for another meeting at 7:15. I wanted to come back and just say that in terms of thinking about voting, we also have to think about the democracy which we live in, and if it is a democracy, and the foundations of the United States was built upon, there were minority property owning people who wanted to have control over it because they didn't think that we could have control over ourselves. And I think when voting, it really just showed, like Neal was saying, every vote is a revolution. It's a way of fighting back and kind of saying here. And I know that there's still some systemic change that does have to happen, and different still have to be adopted. Definitely one that sectional is across a nation, and there is a sense of exceptionalism oneself and thinking of one as an individual when we are one as a collective whole, a community. Like I know everyone before, so I just wanted to leave you with that, the sense of community, and that in case we are all a community. I wanted to thank me being able to share in this space.
You're an exceptional human. Thank you so much for coming back and dropping them jewels. Appreciate it so much. We're so lucky. I'm so lucky. I get to sit with y'all. I'm going to ask one last question because it seems like we are right around that time, and it's a little partisan. I have historically, I have a complicated relationship with electoral politics, but no irony, because there is no such thing. I'm going to hold this up. That's just as we were talking, that's my son and his mom putting in their ballots, just as we're having this conversation. So the first time that my son is eligible to vote, he is doing so. I don't know what that says about generational progress. I don't know what that says about, you know, Camea, you invoked your great grandmother. I don't know what that is. I'll just leave it there. That some kind of journey is happening in my family relative to, you know, he's a second generation American, and There's something there. But the question that I wanted to ask you is about truth, because you know, having had the privilege of hearing you all perform and knowing so much of the core of first wave modality and pedagogy is about the break, is about a kind of, to use Na's words, a kind of exhaustion. At the root of first wave pedagogy is this is a kind of pull towards the place where the artist breaks. And in that space, there is rebirth. And that space of breaking, rebirth, transformation is an energy that then envelops the audience. And we are a community in the break. That said, no one wants to be tired all the time. That also said, in order to get to that place, there just has to be a radical engagement of the truth. And I guess here's where the partisanship comes in, because no matter how I feel about electoral politics, I have been profoundly shaken by the systemic disavowal of the truth as exhibited by the person that holds the nation's highest office. And I just wonder for you all, what kind of truths, what kind of purveyors of truths kind of inspire you outside of electoral politics? Because it seems like what we're contending with, again, now I love that you made it hyper local, because that is the place of most direct action, school boards, propositions, et cetera. At the top of this particular ticket in this particular year, though, there's it feels like there's something pretty critical at stake in the trajectory of this country. And it has something to do with a national relationship to the truth. Let's say the truth of climate change. There are always, I will expect politicians to not tell the truth all the time. I don't expect whatever it is that is happening right now. How do we as a country, through the vote or not, recapture a positive relationship to truth? How do we get back to that? And what is the artist's responsibility outside of electoral politics? What is the artist's responsibility to reconcile and remediate the national relationship to truth?
I'm reminded of a Bell Hooks quote. She says that widespread cultural acceptance of lying is the reason many of us will never know love. And I believe this to be so true, because what a lie does is so dangerously precise to what we do as artists, right? It constructs a world. It constructs a figment of the imagination, which then you can live inside. And when you're in that, it's fictitious. So even as the lies you tell yourself bring you into this convenient joy, the world around you is still burning. So you can make up facts about what is happening in the rainforest and what is happening in the environment all you want. While you're in that lie, it's still coming down. And a lie is not going to protect you. The truth is the formal severance of that imagined fictitious place into the realm of reality, into the realm where we can't take care of you if you're inside an imagined place. We need to take care of you where you are in reality, and the truth gets you there. And as you were saying, to get from the imagined world, the lie, into the reality of truth, there requires a break. a severance. And that is the functional engine of both hip hop and poetry. Those are the specific engines of those two forms. In poetry, one of the defining characteristics is the break, like is the enjambment. We know that when the line stops, when there's a severance of the word, something is unleashed in that breakage. And to me, I think it's the truth. And similarly, the break, the percussive break in the rhythm is what offers us like the b-boy, the breaker. And I get this knowledge from Professor Dwayne Lee Holland, who I know that you're familiar with. He says that when the breaker moves, the spirit itself breaks from the body of the dancer, circulates through the current of the audience, and then moves back into the breaker's body with that new collective energy. And I think that's what we as artists are trying to do, is to find those realms of broken that can break the sort of like eggshell of this imagined world we're living in these like harmful fictions, and step into the truth and step into the possibility of making a real safe haven, not one we lie about, but one that actually protects people, that we actually live inside.
Beautiful.
Absolutely. So well said. What Jackson's Bell Hooks quote actually made me think about is a Toy Dercott quote, in which he says multiple things can be true at once. And that quote itself actually is the motherboard behind all the poems I write, behind every step I take in this universe. And it's that, to kind of take from what you said and kind of add to it, it's that while these truths are true and immediate, so is our joy and our access to this joy. I think that when we make room for the truth, we must also make room for the reality. And reality has this benevolent nature to it. And I think a couple of people may have heard that quote before. But reality, what it does for us is it creates this kind of buffer between us and this is coming from the knowledge passed down to me through generations and the way I've approached community, as well as the way I've made peace with politics and the situation at hand, which is that truth frees us, but multiple things can be true at once. And if there's one thing that I've learned even since the resurgence, not resurgence because she's always been here, but the glaring comfort of allowed racism and hate in this country is that so much of the choices that people make, so many of the ideologies that they take on and decide are an inherent part of them and their essence in this world are born from perception. And your truth and the truth is only as real as your perception is. And it's only as real as you are attached to your perception. I had to let go of a lot of my personal relationship to the way I saw things before I could see the full picture, before I could get comfortable with truth, and before I can sit in my joy. And it's important to be, like Jackson said, you can't live in this world of like, that's not happening. That's not, whatever you tell yourself about what's actually happening may bring you that momentary comfort, but you will never truly be able, at least in my experience, to fully sit in your joy and your possibility for joy, because that's what this is all about. That's what brought us here in this conversation. That is what makes room for art, and that is also our responsibility as artists, I believe, to remind, at least the way I approach my responsibility, the way I choose to take it on, is to remind people of their access to joy, their immediate access to this freedom, which is only in the present. It is really only in the present. In the same way that the world is burning right now, there are a lot of fires that are being put out. And by honoring yourself, by giving yourself that peace of mind as much as you can, that is a part of your fighting, because you cannot fully fight for people if you are unhealed within yourself. Because you can't be on the battlefield, and you can be And that's important work, but you can't leave yourself and your healing on the back burner, because generational healing works. It's real. And in order for these systematic wounds to be patched, these emotional and generational ones have to be addressed. They have to be acknowledged. Because they, at their root, are how these things are born, are how this hurt is perpetuated. When you are comfortable sitting up and pretty much navigating and merchandising yourself off of hate, pure hate, you have a lot of accountability coming for you and a hell of a lot of healing to do. And if you also want to help people, if you want to make change, you got to be in a headspace that's good enough to where you can fully present your best self to the people you're trying to protect. I'm lucky enough and I'm blessed enough to have resources that allow me to do that healing. Not everyone has access to the resources that allow them to do that necessary healing. But hopefully through conversations like this, through accessibility, little bits of things we can do within our community to give accessibility to literature, give people accessibility to the world outside of them, can also help to remind them of the world that exists within them. And I hope that this election, no matter what happens next week, of course, civil unrest is inevitable, but in that, I hope people get the opportunity to love themselves, to know that love, as Jackson said, as Jackson so brilliantly said, love is really at the core of everything that we do. It really is, and everything that we're fighting for. And that's what I hope to permeate to all of you, is love. I love you all. Thank you for your words. Thank you. Thank you for hearing me.
I love it. Nah, it's palpable. Thank you, fam. Jackson, you need to please put that bell hooks quote in the chat. This whole conversation needed to be annotated. I don't know who's in charge of the footnotes out here, but you know what I mean? It's just jewels, just really incredible. I know that we're up against time. I know it's a fucked up construct, but it is so. Dr. Davis, I'm wondering if you might take us out in a penultimate way with a little bit of creativity of your own, maybe a little creative dash of your own. We've heard the poetic stylings of our other panelists, so it'd be great to hear a poetic word, and then maybe we'll bring our fearless leader Sofia back, and then we'll take it from there. But Dr. Camea Davis, will you take us out with the word, please?
Let's go. An open letter to democracy. Searching for architect words to sculpt you into my theory of being, putting too much effort into discovering you, wanting to unearth your lies of your myth. You are monarchy, and I want to be a mother. You a bastard, the worst kind, like my daddy state, a thief with no one to call home, can't even sleep on the kitchen floor of the sins you've committed. A hoarder and a whore, trading what's sacred for commodity, blind and unsure, disregard what's holy and worthy. You are gray, yet truth. Meera too, a rated R history, ancestors were murdered for remembering. You are disembodying our memories, carving lies that echo our experiences but speak nothing of us. Coded language, blackout dates forgotten, forged for government position, hope, a bow-tied noose around our necks. It looks good, sells well, flies off the memory easy as a moniker for a future that erases us, and we be graphite, smear, and smudge. You mirage us into some type of multicultural multiplicity kind of beautiful. Then leave us antiquated and stuck on the sink of our emotions. You shiny dollar coin cool for the undamaged fruit, the manufactured project of us that got out, designed then picked for display. Minds lacking conviction of the seed or the root. We all GMO. Less organic, less shit and stink, more manure, but shit makes things grow. Provocative and imperialist, dominant and dangerous. I am searching for liberty in you, like hunting for gray hairs at age 30, and you are death, massacre, mascara, smoky-eyed romance, something alluring about your proposals and promises. And I want to love you. But you a cheater, a one-night stand, with no forewarning or apology, no text the next morning, just the empty bed and the open wound. You are no solution, just a castle of possibilities. The tide will come and wash away as always, and still I want to love you. I want to love you like every dumb girl too smart for her own lust. I want you, and I want you to need me the way I was taught to need you. But my mama and them 4 mother scholars have told me to let you leave, to build no temple in your honor, to let you go and use all this dust and dirt to leave behind to mama my own masterpiece. But not as bone of your bone, but because I have always been the magic. Everything you stole and made residue of mine, of a residue of was mine from the beginning. You Houdini'd me into believing I was the prop when I have always been the magic. Signed, Black Tomorrow.
Come on, Dr. Davis. Could everybody please go up in the chat for our incredible, incredible guest today? Thank you so much, Mark Bamuki Joseph. You are the host with the most. You are the conversation starter. You are so masterful. Thank you for coming through and holding this space with us. Thank you, Dr. Davis, for all of your work and for bringing together these incredible Youth Poet Laureates. Huge shout out to Meera, who had to dip because she's the National Youth Poet Laureate. So she's a representative, and I know she had things to do. Much love to Hasna and to Jackson for not only your own wisdom, but for invoking so much wisdom. And if anything, y'all reminded me tonight when you said Toy Derricott, Bell Hooks, I said, I need to go visit my bookshelf and see what I need to get next. So thank you for paving the way by cultivating your own expression and for being steeped in what already exists. Y'all are lit. Y'all are amazing. I can't thank you enough. And we do have to get going because guess what? It's a festival and there's another event tonight. So let me just, I will let you all go. I appreciate you so much. I'm going to just say what's coming up next. We're going to close with a video by our final Youth Poet Laureate, and I'm going to see you on the next event. So please make some noise in the chat for all of our guests. Last up, so right after this, Passing the Mic Youth Showcase. What is the American experiment? So all of this week, we've had incredible young people from all across the country join us. We've been doing these events every night, but we've had afternoon workshops where students engaged in this concept of what's the American experiment. They developed new works just that they started on Monday and they're sharing today at 7 o'clock Central Time. We have 30 youth artist activists from Youth Speak San Francisco, Oakland School for the Arts, Teen Hype Detroit, East Madison High School, Urban Word NYC, and the regional Youth Poet Laureates, some of whom you've heard from today. So please join us at 7 o'clock. Keep streaming right here. You'll find us on YouTube. You'll find us on our Facebook. It's going to start in about 25 minutes. And that being said, I want us to close out with the words of our 2018 Nashville Youth Poet Laureate, the 2019 Southern Regional Ambassador. Please go up in the chat for this poem by Haviland Whiting, DA's Office.
The responsibility of the youth blooms like an apple blossom every 4 years, a new rainfall. There's only so much sweetness I can muster while state troopers power wash black bodies like chalk outlines downtown. I voted today for the first time ever, and for a moment I felt like a new bride, anxious about getting stood up at the altar, scared that my country would once again fail me. The train of my wedding dress picks up fallen bones like leaves. When I stand before the ballot box, I'm holding up a cemetery. How could I stay home while my country is on fire? Reform is the necessary key to free the birds in cages who rattle the bars and howl for crimes they did not commit. If you disproportionately incarcerate men, women, and children in the name of hunting those with sin-colored skin, how could I refrain from voting? Every 4 years, the apple blossoms bloom and die. Beneath the petals is a graveyard, a corrupt system. If it is time for change, then it is time to visit the polls.